Hello friends, welcome. Friends, you can see that there are a lot of news articles which talks about MTNL, revival plans of MTNL. Even the Minister of State was also quoted talking about MTNL. So if you look at the top stories, which is listed right in front of you, it says that MTNL revival plans India plan asset transfer framework to a debt-ridden telco. Bank is open to MTNL debt restructuring, reject possibility of haircut, the cabinet secretary to hold meeting next week on MTNL revival, and so on. So friends, what I thought of doing a deep dive video to make you understand what kind of problems that we have created for ourselves as regards MTNL. What is the genesis of this problem? Why this problem started? Because many people who do not have that experience and insight as to what happened in past during the era of 3G auction and even before that, even 2008 when the 2G scam took place, may not be able to understand that why MTNL has become bankrupt, because everything is related with the actions which we took in the decade which started from 2000 to 2010. All are linked together, specifically the point where 2G scam happened. The foundation of MTNL demise was laid by the 2G scam. People will be very surprised to hear that, why I am saying so. And therefore, what I'm going to do, friends, I'm going to go step by step to explain in this video that how the MTNL demise was laid by the 2G scam, and then thereafter 3G auction, which was the design of the auction was such that to maximize revenue as much as possible to the government, and there were certain elements of the design which led to huge increase of prices of 3G auction and BW auction, and the price was fueled by the 2G scam as well. So I'm going to explain step by step how 2G scam laid the foundation and how 3G auction added fuel to the fire, and thereafter how MTNL continued to struggle because the loans that it had taken from banks in order to pay for the 3G auction, how that led to a cascading effect of accumulating losses to an extent that currently the government of India is struggling to revive MTNL. So we'll go step by step. In each and every a point which I have described in the opening remark will be substantiated with facts and figures. So friends, what I'm planning to do is I'm planning to take you through a slide deck which I have prepared, and then as and when there are references which will be required to substantiate the points and bullet points which I have included in the slide deck, I'm going to refer back to those documents. Now the title of the slide deck is MTNL collapse, a policy-induced telecom tragedy. So it was a policy-induced telecom tragedy which happened over a period of 25 years, starting from year 2000 till 2025. So the whole period need to be understood clearly as to why this took place and what kind of policies which we thumped our chest that it is victorious at that particular point of time, how those policies have led to the collapse of MTNL. And then there were pitfalls which the government of India did as it moved forward in time, because if it was the actions were taken in time, then we would not have been in a situation where we have an accumulated debt of more than 30,000 crores. So this presentation deck will explain through the spectrum mispricing, debt explosion, and the revival execution. So the genesis of MTNL financial crisis, which I have explained some bit of it in the opening part of my video. So if you recall, friends, in 2009, just 1 year before the 3G auction, both MTNL and BSNL was assigned one slot of 3G spectrum in 2.1 gigahertz band and one slot of BWS spectrum in 2.5 gigahertz band, which was considered as a WiMAX band. Because when the auction took place, nobody thought that 2.3 gigahertz band will get auction. Actually, everybody was focusing on 2.5 gigahertz band, and therefore MTNL BSNL was assigned 2.5 gigahertz band, one slot. There were two slots. One slot was supposed to get auction, which could not be released because of Department of Space, refusal, and another slot was given to MTNL BSNL. So this was 1 year ahead of the auction. Now, after that, what happened was, before that, 2008, Raja gave all the telecom licenses, and this was given at a subsidized rate. So when the licenses were given, bank funded those companies not only to acquire the license at 1600 crores, but also to participate in the 3G auction. Because bank thought that when they have already invested in these telecom companies and telecom sector was considered booming at that particular point of time, they thought it is quite okay to fund the telecom companies, because those telecom companies without 3G spectrum, it didn't make any sense. So bank lended those telecom companies to participate in the 3G auction. And when those companies participated in the 3G auction, the number of slots were very, very few, because the defense was obstructing the 2.1 gigahertz band release, because the government did not execute defense project which they have committed to. Defense said that nothing doing, I'm not going to release 3G spectrum, but somehow the government was able to extract 3 slots. And because of the actions which took place in 2008, the price and the demand of those 3 slots were so high that it kind of broke the back of many of the companies which participated in the spectrum auction. But the story does not get over yet. See, what happened was, if you look at the spectrum auction, you will find that every circle was categorized at metro, category A, category B, and category C. The reserve price of metro and category A was set almost at par. But what happened was, the category A circles, specifically Delhi and Mumbai, the prices rose beyond 10 times the reserve price. And that broke the back of MTNL, because the government in the auction rule of 2010 ensured that there was an upfront payment clause. Means everybody had to pay upfront for their spectrum. Now, because it was the auction was structured in such a way that the Delhi Mumbai prices went 10 times the reserve price, which is basically, if you say 40% of the auction earnings or auction revenues, with just 20% of the total industry revenues. Right? So if you add Delhi and Mumbai, it was roughly around 18 to 19%. But the auction outcome resulted in a 40% outflow in spectrum, outflow for Delhi and Mumbai. And the total outflow, if you leave aside MTNL and BSNL, if you go to my website, you'll find it was in dollar terms $16.76 billion, which is the highest till date, except in 2015, which was $17.13 billion. Maybe around 2022 also, it's one of the highest, right? $16.76 billion. Now, if you add MTNL, BSNL, then this becomes the highest. Because this does not include, this number, 16.76 number, did not include MTNL, BSNL, because MTNL, BSNL was supposed to pay upfront. So, BSNL got away because BSNL was not holding Delhi and Mumbai. MTNL actually was holding Delhi and Mumbai. So, it paid 11,097 crores, which is 16,561 crores for 3G. And if you look at the 3G, it was 16,000 crores, roughly, the total, for 1.5 megahertz slot. And for BW, it was 12,000 crores. So MTNL paid around 4,536 crores. So this 11,097 crore actually became the foundation of all the bank debt. Because bank lended MTNL, because the maximum holding was of the government. And since it was a government-backed company, though it is listed, banks lended, with full confidence that, the money is not going to go wasted. But they did not do due diligence, because they were lending all the other companies also, like Arcom, Tata, Etisalat. Everybody who got 2G spectrum was lended by banks. They didn't do due diligence to understand whether so many companies will be able to survive this market or not. So the money was paid to MTNL, and then the MTNL paid to the government, right? So this laid the foundation of the MTNL problems, because MTNL didn't have revenues to cover for this huge payment of auction money which they paid to the government. And then they kept on accumulating losses and resulting in a negative equity. So we'll go to that also. So the full amount was paid upfront by raising high interest bank loans. No viable revenue stream to justify this burden MTNL with unserviceable debt, right? So the debt overhang and balance sheet collapse. Now there is a liability of 33,000 crores, which is accumulated in their balance sheet. And let me show you, how the liabilities have accumulated. So if you look at, this is the audited version of their balance sheet of 31st/3/2025 MTNL. Now you look at that non-current asset, which includes spectrum as well. It is 4,903 crores, which is around 5,000 crores, right? Of current asset, of non-current asset. And current asset is around 5,270 crores. Total asset is 10,184 crores. And the equity is negative, 26,935 crores because of the accumulated losses over the years. And liabilities are 24,146 crores. Now, if you add all these liabilities, the liabilities which are current liabilities and the non-current liabilities, it comes out to be 37,119 crores. And since there is a negative equity, and if you add this negative liability, it comes out to be 10,184 crores, which is this asset. So asset, you know that the balance sheet has also always have to be balanced. So this is the balance sheet situation as far as MTNL is concerned. So MTNL assets are largely non-liquid. So we have an equity eroded. Let me just go to this slide. So total liabilities exceeded 33,000 crores. And then there is a bank loan, which is outstanding today of 8,248 crores, which MTNL has to pay. This is not guaranteed by the government. And then there is a 19,806 crores of sovereign guaranteed bond, which was issued by the government as per the Telecom package in FY20 to FY24. And this was backed by the government, which basically means if MTNL doesn't pay, the government of India will pay both interest as well as principal. This is to ensure that MTNL is able to restructure its past loan, right? So those loans were restructured. Now government is owning the maximum liability of MTNL on their head. And there is a 8,248 crores of liability, which is being held by the PSU banks, right? The problem is now that how do you get rid of this liability? That is the balance sheet is going to tell you the story, because you cannot do asset monetization. You really don't have any asset. Look at this non-current asset. Non-current asset is 4,903 crores, of which a certain portion is spectrum also, intangible asset. So if you look at intangible asset, this comes out to be around 11,101 crores of 0.09 crores, right? So mostly the non-current asset cannot be leveraged because of the fact that these are very, very small value. But these are book value. So it could be possible that the asset market value of some of the asset like building and plant, property and plant equipment, etc., can be very, very large, right? But the problem is that you can't liquidate these assets, because if you start to liquidate these assets, then what will happen is the BSNL, which is now going to roll out services in Delhi and Mumbai, they will not have anything to roll out, because they actually have to leverage these assets to roll out the network in Mumbai and Delhi. So it is not very easy to liquidate these assets, and therefore there will be a problem, right, in execution of MTNL's revival. So MTNL's assets are largely non-liquid and critical for BSNL's rollout. Now, government's revival plan and financial support. Now, GOI has approved a package of 29,937 crores. Now, what is this package all about? This package is to bail out MTNL from their current liabilities. The liabilities, the past loans, which are restructured. So the government of India issued bonds, and those bonds were backed by the government of India's, the guarantee, so that MTNL can at least pay off the salaries and run the network. So this package, which was the approval was given, was 29,937 crores. And slowly, these bonds which were, issued in the public domain, as and when the interest payment obligations were due and the principal payments obligation are due, DOT start accumulating or keep provisioning of these outflows in their budget. So ultimately what happened was, whatever money MTNL paid, which is 11,000 something crores in the spectrum auction, now DOT is paying back. So it's like, if you look at the budget, I'm going to show you a reference so that it's become very clear. So this is DOT's budget, right? Budget document. So you see Ministry of Communication budget document of 2026, FY 2026, notes on grants, right? So in this budget, if you see, let me just make it single page contiguous. So in this budget, if you see here, it will be very interesting to see that Department of Telecommunication has provision for financial support for MTNL Nigams on account of of refund of CDMA spectrum and payment of interest of MTNL bonds. So this is the amount, right? And these are the amount for actual for FY27, for budget for FY27, FY24, FY25, revised FY25, and budget FY26. So if you see that, there is a revised FY25 of 311 crores of interest, right? And then principal payment is 3,668, and there are no principal payment due in FY26. So as and when the money gets due, the Department of Telecommunication from the budgetary allocation keeps this item in the budget, right? And that item kind of gets paid off. So ultimately what the Government of India is doing, Government of India is paying for the MTNL losses by delaying this whole thing over a period of time so that the burden on the Government of India is not that much. That's the restructuring on the revival plan, which they did by issuing those sovereign guarantees bond, right, of roughly around 20,000 crores or something like that. Yeah, 22,000 crores, something like that, right? But the bigger problem is that, the Government of India has to manage the bank loans. That is the biggest problem, which is at around 8,000 crores. So if you see here, this revival package includes only the DOT budget. It includes disbursement of DOT budget from FY20 to FY20 to FY25 of 17,868 crores, which is principal, which I showed you. And then we have the interest and for BRS support, etc., and future repayment liabilities of 22,000 crores. But the problem is this number, 8,248 crores. This is the bank loan. This has not been guaranteed by the Government of India. So MTNL has to pay for these loans, right? So how does MTNL pay for these loans? It will be very difficult, because even if these loans are restructured, the liability will be on the Government of India to pay, because MTNL does not have any kind of income resources, right? So BSNL could have bailed MTNL out. When the revival package happened, MTNL and BSNL was assigned spectrum. Actually, BSNL was assigned spectrum, 700 megahertz band and 3.5 gigahertz band in Mumbai and Delhi. But BSNL till date, which is managing MTNL networks, has not launched 4G services in Mumbai and Delhi. And somebody has to ask a question, why did they not do that? Why 700 megahertz and the 2.1 gigahertz band and the 1800 and the 3.5 gigahertz band, which has been assigned to BSNL, is lying idle in it? So if that would have happened, then the monetization of BSNL's network would have started way in advance, and that could have helped MTNL to get some relief on the amount of losses that it is accumulating. So the delay has hurt both MTNL cost base as well as BSNL revenue opportunity. This is a question that the Government of India has to answer. So the strategic gridlock and policy dilemma. MTNL's infra is needed by BSNL, cannot be monetized freely. Bank loans have been defaulted, no GOI-led restructuring or settlement. GOI continues to repay bonds by budgetary allocation, which I showed you. So physical burdens will persist. Two options: liquidate or repay via cash, or let bank absorb the MTNL loss. But banks are not willing to take a haircut. Maybe what will happen, friends, there will be some level of asset monetization, which will be very minimal. I don't know how much they will be able to do, and they will repay the bank, and some of the loans will get restructured, and the budgetary provisions will be increased by the Government of India to repay the bank over a long period of time, what they have done to manage MTNL operation by issuing GOI bonds. I think that's all is going to happen. Rather than that, nothing else will. Well, I don't think anything else, is foreseeable in the future. So conclusion, a case study of policy failure. See, spectrum auction, which we consider as a success, is the biggest failure of the Government of India. I'm not talking about any specific regime. People forgot that spectrum is a resource which cannot be monetized or from revenue purposes. It has to be given with a purpose that people don't misuse that spectrum. There has to be sufficient amount of cost attached to spectrum so as to motivate people to use it, not for revenue maximization. Because as soon as you do revenue maximization, you help the market leaders and all other players in the market who are not the leaders of the market. Like MTNL was only running operation in Mumbai and Delhi. they lost out and other players also lost out, and market has become a monopoly, which I've been saying from the very beginning. So MTNL fell through the flawed auction policy of and PSU obligation. Auction earnings are being reimbursed through bailout and zero-sum outcome right now, friends. The sector has now is suffering exit, litigation, and financial collapse post 2010. So 2010 has been the reference point of all the problems. Actually, the problem started in 2008 with the allocation of 2G spectrum to those companies at a subsidized rate. And it further got aggravated when the government of India could not extract enough spectrum for 3G to have a equitable distribution to those players who needed spectrum. So you have only 3 slots, and then you had got 14 players chasing those 3 slots. Prices got escalated. That became the market reference price for future spectrum auction. That destroyed the total, overall industry. And MTNL paid the price because Mumbai and Delhi was priced the highest. So MTNL is a textbook example of how spectrum was mispriced and destroyed value. And that actually fell on the government heads, who had taken all the credit. Now they have to repay those creditors who actually gave money to MTNL by budgetary allocation of the credit that they took at that time, that how successful the spectrum auction is. So this has been a phenomena which has repeated in time. 2010, then 2014, 2015, 2016, 2020, maybe not 24. Every time the government took credit that how much money that they have accumulated through spectrum auction. But in case of 2010, it was an upfront payment. So now the money has to be, given back to the, the debtors, right, through budgetary allocation. But all those deferred payment, which the government is going to collect in near future, cannot be collected because most of the telecom operators are now bankrupt, including Vodafone Idea, which is facing it very difficult to pay off those loans. So I have already told you that why banks lent to MTNL, a case of misjudged risk, because loans were taken in 2010 and 12 to pay off the 11,097 crores of 3G BWS spectrum, because they thought that, it's a good thing to do because it has been backed by the government. And now they are struggling. MTNL was listed PSU with 56% stake by GOI, and the banks assumed low default risk. Perception that the spectrum was a monetizable asset with strong market value. Expectation that the MTNL would generate service revenue from 3G and BW auction. Bank failed to assess MTNL's weak execution ability and market competition. And therefore, there is no sovereign guarantee, unlike in case of 2019 revival bonds, which were backed by GOI. Total miscalculation similar to the loans extended to telcos which later to collapse. So friends, this is a classic case of failed auction, and the credit which was taken, which was too premature, right? So this is the story of MTNL. I don't think anything will possible now. Asset monetization cannot, repay those loans. MTNL has to be, dismantled. It has to be liquidated. All the assets should be transferred. The government of India should take on all the losses and should be able to reimburse those creditors using budgetary allocation. That's the only solution that I can see in front of me. Rest, I don't think anything is possible, friends. And thanks for listening till the end. And, I hope that you will like this video, and I'll come back with a new video and a new topic next time. Thank you very much, friends.